Good morning, Winterview back again with another brief dialogue. His dear friend, Annastacey, as usual, driving to work. And unusually, it is raining quite hard. You can probably hear the rain pelting my roof. I can hear it through my microphone here. This dialogue is on the process, you might say, of being a person, process of being a self, the apparent self, perhaps. As I've talked quite extensively on in the past, the self exists as concept, but it doesn't only exist as concept. There seems to be a lot of evidence to support the existence of the self. It seems that the entire culture or society is geared around this imagined self so powerfully that everywhere you look, everything you touch, everything you taste, everything you see smacks of self, of individuality. The legal structure of our society is based on the idea that in most cases the person is responsible for their actions, that there is a person somewhere inside the body who exists as the body or inside the body, who decides, who chooses moment to moment what they're going to do next, you might say. It's a very powerful, I don't like the word illusion, but let's go with it anyway. It's a very powerful illusion that is created, that there is a self, that I am indeed a self. We know that the mind has this concept because of some of the behaviors. So I thought I would take a little look at some of the behaviors of the mind that try to reinforce or support the notion of self, of individuality. The first and most obvious process that I think goes on, that's obvious at least to me, is the thoughts I should say, marry up or link to or happen with, operate in concert with, etc. feelings, emotions, such that a thought and emotion arise simultaneously, and the emotion, to use general terms, is just a feeling in the body. So the thought, let's choose a negative thought, I'm no good, there's something wrong with me, that kind of thought, is often felt with a powerful somatic pulse or contraction, a wave of unpleasantness felt in a feeling way through the body. We'll just notionally presume there is such a thing as a body for this discussion. The mind will not be content just to leave it at that. It has to really go for it and add layer upon layer to bolster and create this sense of identity. And another way it does that is the thoughts are quite particular. They are personalized thoughts. A thought of, let's go with the negative, a thought of regret is a very common experience, very powerful memory, a negative memory. For those of you listening, and even myself, I can relate very powerfully to this feeling of regret, this I should have done something differently in the past. If only I'd done things differently, things would be better now. That kind of thought. We often look into that kind of thought, and try and tell ourselves, don't worry, it's okay, reassure ourselves that the regret was unavoidable. But it doesn't seem to help, because the same regret will possibly come back. And the reason it doesn't often help, sometimes it does, is that it's not really the regret that's the problem. It's the fact that I did it, that I have a problem. That's the problem. We have this notional idea of self who is wrong, whose behaviour is problematic, and you could even add on, is some way shameful. The behaviour is shameful. A good example is childhood, which is a very mysterious and confusing time. You're brand new to the world, you might say. The brain isn't fully developed. Parents often forget that their children don't understand things completely, understand things in a very pre-verbal, symbolic way rather than a literal, concrete way. And the child's thinking on certain matters is very primitive, and the child might do something in a primitive way that you would never do as an adult. It'd be too embarrassing or too rude in polite company. So a child might be in a playground and they might have a toy that they like, and another child might come up and just take the toy, which is a classic thing for a young child to do. Just take it. And in a fury, the mind or the brain of the young child, feeling like it's lost a valued treasure, decides that it will act with wrath and vengeance and pushes the other child, pushes them to the ground, and perhaps they fall badly and smack their head, and there's blood and there's tears and hysterics, and now the parents are flapping around, and you're a bad child, you're an evil little thing, all of that wonderful stuff that you get lumped with in childhood. And for days later there's regret. I wish I hadn't have done that. I'm such an idiot. And perhaps even as an adult you could still recall this memory, this childhood memory, which 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, it still haunts you in some way. The haunting is on two levels. The first level is the survival level, which is don't do that again or you'll get in trouble, that kind of learning. And the second is the shameful, why did I do it level, there's something wrong with me level. And this is the really distressing one. This is why there is distress. But the mind, interestingly, in this situation is not attempting to punish you necessarily. It's trying to keep the narrative solid. There's very poor evidence really for the existence of an independent / separate self, and so the mind will use whatever it can take to bolster that sense of identity. And one of the easiest ways for the mind, at least, is to continue powerful narratives of deeds. When I did this, when I did that. We tend to remember the negative more prominently than we do the positive. So the process in action is a remembering process. The ideas are of me, I, the action that I did, the action that I undertook, and so on and so forth. It seems that the point of the purpose of the remembering is to somehow be corrective. Well, I won't do that again, that kind of correctiveness. But actually it's not that at all. It's to try and keep the idea of self stable. And then, of course, let's compound this. That's only one example. In one's life there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of things that I did wrong. And so the mind, now trying to keep the sense of self solid and stable and real in some ways, will keep referring to these events over and over again. It will refer to the more powerful of the events, because the more powerful the event, the more solid the experience is of recalling it. It seems somehow more real and more visceral. The emotions obviously more powerful, the contraction more powerful, and that sense of I even more powerful. It's very challenging, even intellectually, to surrender the author, the sense of authorship. Even if I asked you intellectually just to forget about it, you didn't do it, it wasn't you, there's no you. Just in that kind of endeavour, it would be near impossible to do that, at least for any extended period of time. You might consider it academically and go, well, I suppose academically, but it wouldn't make a difference to your mind ultimately. Your mind would keep on doing that behaviour. And that's that recollection of misdeeds and wrongs and problems, etc., is one of the most powerful ways that the mind maintains this solid narrative of self, or this solid sense of self. The other way, which is we'll go to a little bit of the positive, is to use hope. The process of hope is another very powerful process to reinforce the sense of individuality. The hope obviously is for improvement in some way, salvation of some kind, just betterment in general. I hope things get better for me. This leads to all sorts of interesting mental behaviours, not least of which is jealousy. You can feel jealous very easily for the imagined other who is getting what you deserve, or they're getting something they don't deserve. The self hopes endlessly that even spirituality or enlightenment will be a solution to its problems. It hopes one day that liberation will happen somehow. The liberation, of course, is imagined. It's somehow conceptualized as to how that liberation will happen. All sorts of ideas, like it's a shift of a perceptual shift, an energetic shift. It's a dropping of beliefs. It's a dissolution of the I. When I go away, it will be better, but I don't know for who necessarily. All those kinds of ways of thinking is another way the mind maintains that sense of independence. And the annoying thing is, the nuisance is for the individual who is spiritually seeking, you could say, is that the mind even appropriates spiritual seeking to reinforce existence. The twofold process again, one is the I hope it happens to me, and the other is I don't like me, I'm trying to get rid of me. Once the mind locks in spirituality or spiritual seeking as a thing, you could say, as an endeavor, it's kind of stuck then. It's really, I don't want to say a trap, that's sort of not quite the right word, but it takes on this, spirituality takes on this paradoxical nature. I, who don't exist, need to have existence in order to undertake a search, right? So I have to exist somehow to be seeking. Think about that. That's like just fundamental. Who or what is seeking? And then second part of that is I hope that I get it, that I will understand this, that I will have this revealed to me at some point in the future. And then when it's revealed to me, maybe even a third step there, is that things will be better for me. Or even worse, the me will go away. I don't like this me, this I, this identity. So the imagined individual cannot turn around and see the processes as they're happening. The individual exists as the process itself. As the process itself. So to give you an example of what I mean, it's like you're walking along the road. Imagine you're walking along and you want to somehow observe the walking itself. But to do that, you need to stop. In this example. So every time you stop, you can't see it. So you keep walking, and then suddenly you know you're walking, and you want to see it, so you stop again, and you can't see it. So it's this crazy paradox where you kind of know what you want to see, but every time you try, you kill it straight away. You know, it's that awful state. You know, you can't join a club until you're a member. Some funny quote about that, I can't recall. Yeah. So the self, this is where I hope I'm doing it justice in this description. Just to recap, it's very hard to describe. I'm describing something that does not exist. The self does not exist. But all the processes that go on, that happen, you could say, all these processes, mental processes, societal process, etc., suggest there is such an entity. It's like walking around a giant city, the perimeter of a city, and every few kilometers or every few miles there's a sign on a road that says city centre this way, and it sort of points. And you keep walking in this sort of approximate giant circle, and every now and then seeing these roads. So you start to imagine that all these roads are leading in towards the centre where the city is, right? And at some point you decide, okay, I'm going to go and see this city. I'm going to walk down one of these roads. So you start walking down one of these roads, and you walk for a few hours, and suddenly you're at the other side of the road with the arrow pointing back, as if you've walked past it and missed it somehow. So you turn around and head back looking for this city. And all the while, what you don't realize is that you're in the city, and that there is no and that there is no city at the same time. That it's kind of like that. I wonder if that metaphor was clear. The fact that there are signs and roads suggest that there is, yet when you look for it, you can't find it. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. We see this is seen metaphorically throughout the physical world as well. We know, even from basic biology, you could say, biology and physics together, that things seem to be there, but when you look really hard, you can't find them. So we have a leaf from a tree, we look at it, looks like a leaf, then we say there's a leaf. We look harder, we look deeper, microscope, we see cells. Now the leaf is gone, or rather the leaf still exists as the concept that I'm looking at a leaf. I'm looking at the cells, I'm looking deep inside the leaf. So it's still kind of there, looking even harder if we had a more powerful microscope. I don't know how powerful microscopes are these days. But let's imagine now we can see the elements that compose the cells, and now we're looking at the atomic level of the leaf, and now all the cells have gone. But in your mind you're still holding the idea, I'm looking at a leaf, yet you're only seeing these atomic particles. And now we look deeper and deeper, and the atomic particles go away, and you have to keep holding the idea that I'm still looking deeply inside a leaf. See how it exists as concept, yet the experience is not of a leaf at all now. It's not there. And getting down to the subatomic level, if there is such a thing, there's nothing. Seemingly there's nothing. It's gone. So the whole idea of leaf now is just notional, just conceptual. It's a little bit like that. The evidence seems to be there that it's a leaf, yet looking at it, it's not there. So there seems to be a self, apparently is a self, because the processes all seem to support this idea of a personal, independent self. The memories, the hopes and dreams for the future, the body that I think seems to follow me around, seems to be there all the time, looks the same every day. All these processes seem to support and give rise. But when I look hard, I can't find it. Cannot find it. You could say, in some ways, it exists as process, but that doesn't tell you anything just to say that, because that's the entire totality exists as as process. So the seeking energy, you could say, or the energy of self, or process of self, seems to unfold in a personal narrative, a story about me. And the story about me, this is the sort of magical bit in a way. No one does that. No one is doing that. It just happens. It just happens. So that's where it becomes very mysterious. It just happens. This process of self unfolds effortlessly. No one's doing it. It seems personal. It seems that the goal should be to somehow get rid of it. I should get rid of this process. But then you see the paradox straight away. Who would get rid of it? Who would get rid of a process that isn't solid, that no one's doing? How would that happen? And now you can see all the paradoxes arise at once. How is anything happening? How is even the idea that I'm talking to you happening? And so on. And the mind starts to fall apart there. It's like, wow, I can't even conceptualize that. It's too big for the mind to hold. Anyway, I think that's enough talk for this morning. Rain has stopped, road is clear, work is dead ahead, unfortunately. Thanks again for listening. As usual, your comments are welcome.